Alright, welcome back to the Living Redefined YouTube channel. It is currently 10 to 8 on Thursday, February 28th. Kayla's been gone all day, so I've just been doing some work around the house, but I haven't fed my worms in a while. In a long while. So they've probably gotten a banana or two in the last few weeks, which is not good because there's probably about 3,000 worms in there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut up, I got some celery, some avocado, a bunch of avocado and a bunch of cucumber for them, which they love. They tear through cucumber pretty quickly. So we're going to cut all that up and I'm going to show you how I feed my worms. Let's go. Alright, so we have, for the worms, 3 cucumbers. We have 6 avocados that are very, very old, I guess. They're actually really hard at this point. And then we have a bag of celery tips. So we're just going to chop all this up real quick. Typically I would blend this. I would chop it up into little itty bitty pieces and then I would blend it for the worms, but this blender isn't very good for it. We're staying in an Airbnb right now, so we don't have our actual stuff. So I'll just chop this up, chop everything up, and then get the eggshells, which I'll show you in a minute, and then we will go and feed the worms. Okay, so that's everything chopped up. The celery was already it's just the tips, so it's already pretty chopped up. The avocado is very gross, very, very old, but that's fine for the worms. I did leave the stickers on, which I don't typically do, solely because they're too difficult. Oh, that one actually came off, but the other ones were too difficult to get off with just the dried old skin. So again, this is 3 cucumbers, 6 avocados, and then 10 or 20 celery tips. This will typically keep them fed for a couple of weeks. So let's pull the worms out and we will get this in there for them. Alright, so we just finished cutting everything, which you can see here. The avocados are very old, they're very gross, but again, for the worms, that doesn't really matter. The worms aren't picky. Celery tips I didn't need to cut, they're already cut. And I cut all the cucumbers into small pieces. I don't typically care or worry too much about sizing. Typically, like I said, I'd put this in a blender, a Magic Bullet or something like that. If you have a Blend Tech or a Vitamix, those are much better. But I don't have any of that. Like I said, we're at an Airbnb right now. We're working on our house at the moment, so we don't have anything with us. So this is going to have to do. The only downside is it will take a little longer for them to break it down. But it won't add as much immediate moisture to the bin, which is good because the moisture is probably already pretty high. So I will go get the worms and bring them out here, and we will feed them our little feast here. Alright, so this is the worm bin. It is just 2 totes. I'm not exactly sure of the size of the totes. One is just a container. It has a couple pieces of wood in the bottom to lift it up off the other tote. That way all the moisture and the water can fall through and collect down there. I'm just going to put this on the ground. Alright, so you can see we have holes just for airflow. There's a lot of dog hair on here. We got 3 big dogs. So let's pull this off. It's actually not too bad in here. I did add a couple egg cartons, just ripped up egg cartons recently, just for more bedding. I can see that they've torn through everything pretty well. They love these bananas. We threw some banana peels in here a little while ago. They're tearing that apart, but they are low on food. They haven't eaten in quite a while. This is really heavy. So you can see that's what we're looking at right now. I'll get some other close-up shots of this before everything is done so that I can tie those in right here. But all we're going to do is we are going to dump our food over the top. Now, a lot of people say feed on one side, feed on, alternate sides. There's all these different methods. Actually, here, I can show you this. This is the final piece to an avocado core that we threw in there quite a while ago. Alright, so you can see we got a couple worms left on this banana peel. They've all kind of dropped off and went down inside. But we have a little bit of cover material here, which is egg cartons, old egg cartons, or coffee trays, or coffee to go trays. So all we're going to do is we are going to take our food, we are going to put it on one side, and then cover this up, because this is not enough cover material. They've processed it all pretty well. So if I dig down here, you can see how many worms we have. I'll estimate that we probably have 3,000 to 5,000 in here. That's a rough estimate with really no scientific background whatsoever, so take it for what you will. But we'll dig down a bit, and you can see how many worms we have just in that little chunk. There we go. On the inside, you can see all of them. They're crawling into my fingers. The one thing I don't like doing when I grab them like that, or the only reason I don't like doing it, is because a lot of babies. There's always a lot of babies in here, and they get stuck to your hands really easily, and you won't see them, and you'll end up squishing them. So I always try to be very vigilant about making sure I have no babies on my hands, and then we fill. So actually I'm going to fill on this side now that I've dug down a little bit. So again, this is just all of our celery tips, which is nice and leafy. These will get processed really quickly. Typically I don't throw in food that is this fresh. No rhyme or reason to that, but for the most part, scraps go in here. So these are the avocados that we're using, which are very old and very gross. This skin will get processed along with everything else. And then we have the stickers on still. You're not supposed to leave the stickers on, but I'm just doing it this time because it's too difficult to get them off. They've kind of lost all of the moisture, so they're very adhered. So we'll just dump this whole bit in here. And I'll kind of spread it out so it takes up that whole side. There we go. Put that aside. That's a lot of food for them. That'll last them a couple of weeks. Typically, it's a pound of food in weight per day. A pound of food for every 1,000 worms per day. But I don't find that this bin keeps up to that. So this will last quite a while. Now we do need cover material, because if I just throw this in here like this, then the worms are not going to come to the top and eat this cucumber. They're just going to stay in the bottom and kind of peck away at the celery and things like that. So we have, this is hamster and rabbit bedding. Now I've already checked this out. It's all paper. It's just recycled paper. There's no sodium. There's no anything in it. There are some of these types of bedding that contain baking soda and additives like that to maintain moisture and smell, but this doesn't have any of those. So, and as you can see, if I pull this up right here, we've been using this as bedding for quite a while, since probably October, November, and it's worked out just fine. So they don't need a ton, especially of this stuff, because in this bag it's compressed really, really well. But we are going to fully cover anything that we're adding in right now. Actually, I'm going to give them a good layer on the entire bin because this may be one of the last times that I put cover material in here before we harvest the castings and move these worms to a bigger bed in the early spring. These guys are all going to go into a bathtub worm bin that I'll be building within the next couple of months once the 6 feet of snow that we have outside is gone. So that's a lot of cover material. I'll add a little bit more just to make sure that all the food's covered. Now, typical advice here would be to wet this because you want this very wet. But I don't wet it just yet. If I wet it now, then I have no idea how much moisture that food is going to bring into the situation. So I don't want to wet it and then have the moisture release from all the vegetables and make it anaerobic. We want to keep this in an aerobic environment. So we will leave this for a few days, let that food kind of start to break down, and this will inevitably suck some of the moisture out. All this bedding will suck some of the moisture up from the bottom. Then we can see what the moisture content is like in the bin, and we can add more water or more cover material as needed. So, alright guys, so that is my worm bin. This is my first worm bin that I've made. I've had this for about a year. It is very heavy. I'd say it's probably 60 pounds worth of castings and unfinished cover material that is lower in the bin. So this is what the bin looks like after we've added the food, after we've added the bedding, and it'll stay this way until the worms come up. Like I said before, there's probably 3,000 to 5,000 worms in there. So until they work their way up through that food, it'll stay looking pretty much exactly like this until we move them to the bed that we are going to be making in the bathtub. Alright, so that's how we feed the worms. Now, like I said, we are going to be making a new worm bin out of a recycled bathtub that we have. We're just building our house now. We have an extra bathtub. It's currently covered in 4 feet of snow. So once that snow is gone, we're going to move these guys into that bin. I might just split it, so it'll be about 2,000 worms roughly per bin. But we're going to move them over to that, and we are going to really pack that one full because we need a lot of worm castings for the amount of gardens that we're going to have. So that's how we feed them. Keep an eye out for that worm bin build video. I'll be doing that in the coming weeks once we get better weather. But thanks for hanging out with me, and we will see you on the next video.